I let my sister live with me for free when she had nowhere else to go. No rent, no deadline, no conditions. At the time, it didn't feel like a sacrifice. It felt like the most obvious decision in the world. Family helps family. That was the rule I grew up with, not written down anywhere, but reinforced through years of quiet expectations and unspoken guilt. If someone was struggling and you had the ability to help, you stepped in. You didn't negotiate. You didn't calculate what it would cost you later. I never imagined that kindness could be mistaken for weakness, or that generosity could turn into entitlement, or that the person who would eventually try to take my home would be my own sister. This isn't a story about sibling rivalry. It's about boundaries learned too late, and the exact moment I realized peace isn't real if it's built on silence. I was 26 when Emma showed up at my door. She didn't call ahead, didn't text. She just stood there in the hallway with a backpack hanging off one shoulder, a worn duffel bag at her feet, and that look people get when they've run out of options but still hope you won't notice. Her eyes were red, her smile tight, like it was being held together by effort alone. She'd dropped out of college halfway through the semester. Again, our parents had been supporting her financially for years, quietly convincing themselves that this time would be different. When she quit without telling them and still asked for more money, something finally snapped. They cut her off and called it tough love. Said she needed consequences. Emma called it abandonment. I knew the pattern. This wasn't the first bridge she'd burned. She had a way of pushing people to their limit, and then acting shocked when they stepped back. Friends, roommates, classmates, the details changed. But the ending never did. Something went wrong, someone else was blamed, and Emma moved on to the next soft landing. That landing was my apartment. I just need somewhere to stay for a little while, she said quietly. Until I figure things out. I had a spare bedroom, a steady job, savings I'd built carefully by saying no to myself more times than I could count. Compared to her, my life looked stable, easy, almost unfair. So I said yes. You can stay as long as you need, I told her. Just get back on your feet. She cried, hugged me like I'd pulled her out of deep water, told me I was saving her life, told me I was the only one who ever really cared. Promised she'd never forget it. For the first month, she acted like she meant every word. She helped with groceries, cleaned without being asked, thanked me constantly. She moved through the apartment carefully, like she understood she was a guest and didn't want to overstep. She talked about finding work, about enrolling again someday, about doing things the right way this time, and honestly, I believed her. I liked believing her. It felt good to help. It felt right to be the reliable one. I'd always been that person, the calm one, the responsible one, the one who absorbed pressure so other people didn't have to. Having Emma there made that identity feel useful instead of exhausting. We'd sit up late some nights talking in the kitchen, sharing cheap takeout and half-finished stories. She'd thank me again, softer this time, like she was afraid if she said it too loudly it might disappear. I told myself this was what healing looked like. This was what family was supposed to do. By the end of the first month, the apartment felt full again. Lived in. Warm. I didn't notice the shift at first. That's the thing about slow changes. They don't announce themselves. They arrive quietly, wrapped in familiarity, and by the time you recognize them, they already feel normal. At first, nothing felt wrong enough to confront. That was the problem. Small changes crept in so gradually that each one felt too minor to mention. On its own, a dish left in the sink overnight, then two, a grocery item finished without being replaced, music playing later than usual, loud enough that I could hear it through my bedroom wall, but not loud enough to justify an argument. I always noticed, but I told myself it didn't matter. I wasn't helping Emma for praise. I wasn't doing this to keep score. She was my sister and she was trying. That's what I kept telling myself. Every time I felt irritation rise, I pushed it down and replaced it with patience. By the third month, helping had turned into hosting. Friends started showing up without warning, not asking, just appearing. They'd sprawl across the couch, help themselves to snacks, laugh loudly like the place belonged to them. Emma never checked with me first. She'd just say, "Oh, hope that's okay," after they were already inside. I said it was fine. It was easier than explaining why it wasn't. The apartment no longer felt like a place I returned to after work. It felt like a space I navigated carefully, adjusting my presence so I wouldn't disrupt whatever was already happening. I'd lower my voice, delay meals, spend more time in my room convincing myself I just needed quiet. By month 4, Emma stopped thanking me altogether. Not deliberately, not dramatically. It just faded, like something she'd outgrown. When I brought groceries home, she'd comment on what I bought instead of thanking me. When I cleaned shared spaces, she didn't notice, or didn't feel the need to acknowledge it. I noticed that too. She started making comments about the apartment, casual, offhand observations that landed heavier than they were meant to. "It's kind of small for 2 people, don't you think? You really lucked out with this rent. I don't know how you managed to save so much. Must be nice." They were framed like jokes, but there was something underneath them. Assessment, comparison, quiet resentment. By the 5th month, she'd settled into the space completely. Her things spread beyond the guest room, shoes by the door, toiletries in my bathroom, laundry mixed with mine. It wasn't one big invasion. It was 100 tiny ones. And because I didn't stop the first, it felt unreasonable to stop the 100th. I kept telling myself this was temporary. By month 6, Emma had a part-time job. Not great pay, but steady. Enough to start planning something, an exit, a timeline, independence. She didn't. And I didn't ask, because asking felt like pressure. And pressure felt unkind. I wanted her to succeed because she wanted to, not because I forced her to. I didn't want to become another person in her life who demanded things. So I stayed quiet. That silence became my contribution. The dynamic shifted completely, though I didn't name it yet. Emma stopped acting like a guest and started behaving like a co-owner. She'd comment on my schedule, ask when I'd be home, suggest changes to how things were arranged. One night, she said, "If you ever decide to move, let me know. I could totally handle this place." I laughed it off. She didn't. I told myself I was imagining things. That stress was making me sensitive. That siblings fought and adjusted and figured it out. But something felt off. I started feeling like I needed permission in my own home. Permission to have people over. Permission to be tired. Permission to exist without accommodating someone else's moods. Still, I said nothing, because I'd built an identity around being the reliable one. The fixer? The person who absorbed discomfort so others didn't have to. That identity had served everyone else very well. It nearly cost me everything. The first real crack appeared late one evening, in a way so subtle I almost missed it. I came home to find Emma on the couch with her laptop open, smiling at the screen. Not scrolling, not distracted, focused, satisfied. "Hey," I said. "What's up?" She closed the laptop a little too quickly. "Nothing," she said. "Just job stuff." The answer came fast. Too fast. A small alarm went off in my chest. A familiar one. The kind I'd learned to ignore. So I ignored it. I went to my room and shut the door. 10 minutes later, my phone rang, and everything I'd been avoiding suddenly demanded my attention. I stared at my phone for a second before answering, already bracing myself for something I didn't yet understand. "Hey," my landlord said, his voice casual, unbothered. "Just wanted to confirm, you're still planning to move out at the end of the month, right?" For a moment, I couldn't speak. "I'm not moving," I said finally. "Why would you think that?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. I could hear papers shifting. "Oh," he said, "that's strange. Emma told me you were relocating for work. She said she wanted to take over the lease." My stomach dropped so fast it felt like the floor gave out beneath me. I thanked him, hung up, and stood there in the quiet of my room, staring at the wall like it might explain what had just happened. My heart was pounding, but underneath the shock was something colder. Recognition. She hadn't asked me. She hadn't warned me. She'd moved like the decision was already made. I walked straight to her room. She was sitting on the bed, phone in hand, completely relaxed. When she looked up and saw my face, her expression didn't change. "Did you tell my landlord I was moving?" I asked. She didn't hesitate. "No," she said. "I just asked if it was possible for me to take over the apartment someday." The lie was smooth, practiced, because I'd already checked the call records. She hadn't asked a question. She'd made a statement. She'd told him I was leaving. She spoke with certainty. "Why would you do that?" I asked. She sighed like I was being unreasonable. "Because you don't need it," she said. Calm. "Certain, I do. You can afford to move. You always land on your feet. I'm finally getting my life together, and I need stability. Not can I have it. Not would you help me? I need it, so you leave." "I helped you and you had nothing," I said quietly. "I know," she replied, "and I'm grateful. But that doesn't mean you get to hold it over my head forever." Holding it over her head. I stood there listening, feeling something inside me disconnect. My instinct was to fix it, to soften the moment, to explain, to find a compromise that left everyone just uncomfortable enough to call it peace. Then I saw it clearly. She wasn't scared. She wasn't confused. She wasn't desperate. She was confident. She'd already told the story, already claimed the space, already assumed I'd back down like I always did. She didn't just betray me. She bet on me not stopping her. That's when the guilt shut off. Not anger. Not rage. Clarity. The next morning, I called my landlord. I didn't explain my feelings. I didn't defend myself. I stated facts. The lease is in my name. I am not moving. My sister misrepresented the situation. She will be leaving by the end of the week. There was a pause. Then he said, "Thank you for clarifying. The lease stays with you." I hung up and felt something shift in my chest, like the ground had finally settled. When I told Emma that night, she didn't cry. She exploded. "You're really doing this?" She yelled. "You're really going to make me homeless?" No apology, no accountability, just accusation. "You had another option," I said. "You could have asked." She laughed, actually laughed. "You wouldn't have said yes," she said, "and I needed it more than you." That sentence told me everything. This wasn't desperation. It was entitlement. My parents called the next day. My mom cried. My dad sounded disappointed. "How could you do this to your sister? She's struggling. She needs support." I told them the truth. She lied to my landlord. She tried to take my apartment. Silence. Then my mother said it. "She's your sister." And for the first time in my life, I didn't fold. "Exactly," I said, which is why she should have asked instead of manipulating me. They wanted peace. They wanted me to absorb the damage quietly like I always had. This time, I didn't. Emma had 1 week to leave. Emma packed loudly. Not because she needed to, but because she wanted me to hear it. Drawers slammed. Closet doors banged. Boxes dragged across the floor with exaggerated effort. Every sound carried an accusation, like noise itself could make me reconsider. I didn't respond. I stayed in my room, answering emails, folding laundry, doing ordinary things that suddenly felt radical. I wasn't avoiding her. I was choosing not to participate in the performance. She didn't apologize. She didn't explain. She told our parents I'd changed. That success had made me selfish. That I cared more about an apartment than my own sister. The truth was simpler. I hadn't changed. I'd stopped being usable. The day she left, she didn't say goodbye. She walked out with her bags and didn't look back. The door clicked shut behind her, soft and final. I waited for the guilt to arrive. It never did. Instead, the apartment felt lighter. Not empty, just honest. The tension that had lived in the walls disappeared. I could breathe again without checking my tone or timing. I cooked dinner and ate it quietly, standing at the counter just because I could. I slept through the night for the first time in months. That silence wasn't loneliness. It was peace In the weeks that followed, Emma bounced between friends' couches. She called our parents constantly, cried, repeated her version of the story until it sounded convincing. For a while, they believed her. They tried to gently nudge me back into my old role, the fixer, the one who made things easier for everyone else. I didn't budge. Then something shifted. My mom saw the messages. The ones Emma had sent to friends before everything blew up. The ones where she joked about taking the apartment. The ones where she said, I was too nice to stop her. The story cracked, not because I defended myself, but because the truth didn't need my help. My parents didn't apologize. Not fully, but they stopped pushing. They stopped asking me to reconsider. That was as close as they could come, and it was enough. Months passed. Emma eventually found a place of her own. A job. Responsibilities she couldn't hand off to someone else. We barely talk now. There are no dramatic confrontations, no big reconciliation scenes, just distance. And for the first time, that distance feels healthy. I used to think being a good sister meant sacrificing whatever was necessary to keep the peace. I thought love was measured by how much discomfort I could absorb without complaint. I mistook endurance for virtue. I don't anymore. What I learned isn't complicated, but it is hard to accept. People who benefit from your lack of boundaries will always resist them. They will call you selfish. They will say you've changed, not because you're wrong, but because access has been revoked. I don't hate my sister. I don't wish her harm. I genuinely hope she grows into someone who understands trust and respect. But I no longer build my life around that hope. My apartment stayed mine. But more importantly, so did my sense of self. I speak up sooner now. I pause before agreeing. I listen to discomfort instead of silencing it. I've learned that peace bought with self-erasure is just another kind of loss, and I'd rather be honest than accommodating. If this story feels familiar, if you've ever been made to feel guilty for protecting what's yours, I want you to know this. Loyalty without boundaries isn't love. It's permission. Choosing yourself doesn't make you cruel. It makes you clear. And clarity, I've learned, is the most respectful thing you can offer to others and to yourself.